Hello and welcome to the TGH College Hardwood Podcast. I am Joe. With me is Greg, as always, here to recap Feast Week and preview the upcoming week of basketball. Greg, we had an awesome Feast Week with a lot of good games, and this week looks like it's going to be pretty good as well. SEC, ACC Challenge, we have Big Ten conference play starting, and a lot of good non-conference games this week.
More importantly, Dayton is back.
Oh boy. Do you want to talk about their net ranking or their KenPom ranking, or what do you want to talk about first, Greg?
Okay, I listen. Forget the metrics. You know, beat Georgetown and really gave BYU a scare, which has been a story for a couple of teams this year. But Bryce Hurd, I think they might have found something. They might have found what they've been looking for. A little more dynamism on offense, which they definitely needed um, quite a bit. So that was not anything I was expecting to get out of Feast Week. But it always delivers. Always delivers something you're not expecting to see. The other thing I wasn't expecting to see is Michigan, Joe. I feel like that's probably should open the pod talking about the most dominant team, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we change it every week, but a team that might have the best resume now might be Michigan. After saying Arizona might should be number one, it's changing week by week. I honestly think there's a lot to be said about not knowing about these teams all the way yet. There are, as we just said, the net rankings came out officially today. Dayton looked pretty good this week, and they're ranked 88th. There's like teams like Buffalo's ranked ahead of them, Northern Colorado's ranked ahead of them, Pacific, Columbia, William and Mary, Utah Valley. It's a weird year so far, and it does usually start like this, but it seems like even weirder than usual. And I guess the reason I say that is you mentioned Michigan. We're going to get into it a little bit later, but some of the teams they played and struggled with earlier in the year look pretty good now. So it kind of makes it like, oh, that makes sense that you maybe didn't have everything together with uh, all these transfers and everything and playing some solid teams. So, Greg, let's start it off here. We're going to start with the Maui Invitational. That was won by USC. A little bit of a surprise there. We both did not pick them. I picked NC State. You picked NC State. Um, they beat Arizona State in the final, so a Pac-12 rematch there, and they beat Boise State, Seton Hall, and then Arizona State, a team that I don't think people had too high expectations for, but they do have some solid players. Like Rodney Rice is averaging 16 points per game. He has assists per game, and he was a key cog in this machine. And it just kind of makes you wonder, you know, that Maryland team last year, they had so much talent, man. What's going on? I mean, obviously they got Sweet 16, but should they have gone farther, Greg? That's the one question I'm asking. But for USC, Musselman looks like it's a better team than people expected.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you tell me if you agree with this or not. I'm going to credit USC. Okay, you win the Maui. That's good on the Big Ten. And this whole narrative of the Big Ten. No title since 2000, and we look around the landscape. Okay, Purdue looks good. Michigan looks good. Michigan State looks good. There's a long list, and this is just kind of another feather in the cap for the Big Ten. I'm not saying USC is a national title contender, but deep league, maybe this league could produce a national champion this year. But tell me if you disagree, but this feels like one of the more forgettable Maui invitationals. And like I guess surface you could say, okay, yeah, that's probably what you would expect when you just look at the list of teams that were there, and especially in comparison to the event that it was going up against, the players era with, like half the field ranked. So I give credit to them. I guess they do have a little bit of an advantage. They only got to fly from Southern California to Hawaii. Some of the other teams, Seton Hall's flying across the country, NC State's flying across the country. So that's a tiny detail, but still, um, I don't know. I'll say this: it moved the needle for me on USC to from probably what I would say off my radar to on my radar. That's very like abstract thing to say, but I'll be looking at games they play, coming up, and maybe try and make time to see them play at least one of their. I don't think we're picking anything this week. I know they made it into the They made it into the AP poll this week, and we try to pick on the show. We try to pick every ranked versus ranked at least. But I think when I was looking at their schedule, it didn't look like they had much coming up here that would kind of make us pay attention to them. So I guess the only thing we would be talking about them is if they had a bad loss here in the next week or two, right?
Yeah, true. Worth noting, like saying that they're better than expected does not mean they're going to be Final Four. I think a lot of times teams win these early feast week tournaments, and we kind of think, oh, they're awesome, they're going to be fine in March. That's not always the case. They do have a lot of key components, though, like Rodney Rice, who made a Sweet 16 last year, and Chad Baker Mazara had all those good years with Auburn. As crazy as he might be, that still means something. So there are pieces there that they can put together. And you're right, maybe national championship, I don't know. It looks like they got a couple contenders in the Big Ten, three teams in the top 10 in this week's AP poll. But it does look like it could be a little bit deeper with teams like Indiana stepping up and like USC and Iowa. We're going to talk about a little bit later on, and like Illinois as well. So um, it definitely helps the Big Ten. And you're right. I guess more of the Maui conversations, kind of what we talked about last week, Greg, is just you're getting money to play in the players era. You can pay some more NIL money if you win. The players are going to get that directly if you win. For if you go to the Maui, you got to pay money to get out there. It is fun. It is traditional, and it's a selling point to recruits and transfers of hey, we're going to Maui next year. But it's with the players era expanding to 32 next year. It's going to make the Maui and the Battle for Atlantis even harder next year. All right, next one up, Greg. We do have the players era championship. We have Michigan wins this. We'll start with the winners because, like you said, we should have opened the show with them. But beat San Diego State, beat Auburn, and at that point, Greg, I'm thinking to myself, and you can tell me if you felt similar. Like this is a stupid tournament because they played two teams. For San Diego State, I like them. I thought they could be a Final Four contender, but they're a mid major Mountain West team. And then they play Auburn, who we've seen so far in the season is very up and down, one way or the other. It's like they can beat a lot of teams, but they also lose a lot of teams, and they kill those teams big average margin of victory, and then they go kill Gonzaga, and it's just like, oh shit, this team is look at them. And this is a team, Greg, that we mentioned last week had been struggling. I think you mentioned it. This is some of the teams they've been playing, and then we find out we're going to talk about TCU in a second here, but TCU is not as bad as we thought. And that just kind of goes to show maybe like we just don't know about these teams early. We're trying to figure out as we go along. Um, Before I go into my later on rant about the Players Era Festival for the future, Michigan did not only won some tough games, but they won very impressively. And Yaxel Lendenborg and a lot of their pieces are really coming together. And I think you're going to see this team be very similar to what they were last year. Maybe even a little bit better when it's all said and done. A team that I think could make a Final Four. Maybe they don't when we see the bracket, but that's the vibes I get. The matchup problems they pose and the talent they have on this roster, Greg.
Yeah, what a change from the Juwan Howard era, man. I mean, that happened quick. And I know we say in today's day and age that, flipping a roster and changing a program can happen a lot quicker just because of the transfer portal and NIL at a school like that and whatnot. But that doesn't mean it's not impressive how quickly he's got this thing running. Um, you already mentioned it. We kind of earlier in the year, well, not earlier in the year, but within the last couple of weeks, um, they struggled against Wake, they struggled against TCU, but maybe those things look a little different. Um, it's the TCU thing is still a question mark, and we can talk about that, in a little bit. But I feel like Joe, it's a lot of this is I guess maybe a big takeaway. It feels like there's parity in the sport, but parity in the upper echelon. Does that make sense? Like we're not. I feel like we're not going to see a ton of A10 Mountain West teams making noise in comparison to like the teams that were here all in the um in the players era. Like it feels like there's some parity going around with the power schools, which I guess is to be expected with how this is. It just doesn't feel like, the only result that I can think of that was the questionable one was the New Orleans beating TCU. But other than that, it feels like, you know, we go one day into the next and we're like, okay, is this team good? Is that team good? But it's comparing resumes of power conference teams against power conference teams. There doesn't seem to be a lot of competition bubbling at the mid level of the sport that's given these teams run.
No, I agree with you. I assume you mean that like Michigan wasn't thought of as to be this good, but now they are. We didn't really understand that. And the parity is that we didn't preseason wise didn't expect them to do well. They are one of the teams that are doing well, and some of the teams that at the top are not doing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I think that's something we're seeing in the transfer portal era of college sports. I think they said 12 of the top 25 teams are the same as the preseason in college football, and I think it's just probably even worse in basketball, just the way this sport is. Find guys in different roles, find out how they're going to fit, and this Michigan team, like I trust Dusty May, but you just kind of looked at it and it's like, well, how much scoring are they going to have on the perimeter? Roddy Gale, is Elliot Cadeau going to be more of a shooter now than he was? He's a very good passer. We all know that, but he seems to have a really good system and it's working out. So I'm with you on that. I do still think there's some room for some mid majors to make some noise, and I think we'll see that come to life maybe in March. But for right now, it really very much is we're not seeing those mid-major teams winning. We're not seeing a lot of upsets of top 25 teams, like you said. It's not for how long do we have unranked not being a ranked team? So that's kind of crazy. So Michigan gets that win in the Players Era Festival. There was a lot of good games, Greg. Just the one rant I'll say here. I know you agree with at least some of this. They're going to 32 teams next year. It is a stupid event when you don't have a bracket. I hate to say it. They're trying to say like, oh, in AAU tournaments we do this. We do point differential because you have three games, and then if you have a bunch of teams tied at 3-0, you got to decide who's going to win. Just have a bracket because a lot of the times it's not fair. The scheduling in this tournament wasn't fair. Even if Michigan did prove people right by beating San Diego State and Auburn, there was other teams who played tougher schedules, and it's never going to be perfect. And this is a good chance for everyone to get games in, but you can schedule the bracket just like the Maui or just like the Battle for Atlantis, where everyone still stays and plays their games. But having this thing where, oh, we're going to have you play two games and then have the championship decided, even though there's a whole bunch of other teams who are very good and could qualify for it, is stupid. And then having, next year, like, oh, if you lose, you don't make the third weekend, you don't make the third weekend. Um, it's stupid. Oh, you can still play some of the teams who are also in the festival, and just be normal. The reason why people are watching these games is not because of the format of the tournament. They are watching these games because it's big time matchups with big time players, and that's why we're watching it. So it's awesome. I still like the Maui. I would like the Maui to have some sort of a renaissance here, maybe next year. I'd love the Battle for Atlantis to come back a little bit, but you are dominating your field. This is what your job is. We talked last week, Greg, about the greedy people in sports who don't do it for them for the love of the sport. They do it for the money. Even for the money aspect, you could do this and just have people watch because it is a tournament, not and because it's good teams matching each other, not because it's just the way you format it like an AAU tournament. That's just something I think is stupid, and I really, really hate that part of it. That is kind of like watering down the sport a lot, I think. But that was my take. I know you feel similarly. I'll let you say anything. Final thoughts on the players era there.
Yeah, the unbalanced scheduling is so stupid. Like Iowa State beats St. John's, and then they go beat, and then they beat Creighton. And granted, that schedule is what it is, but they went 2-0, and they they didn't even play for the money. They played in the fifth place game. Like that's so dumb. Like you're telling me you can be in an event. I won't call it a tournament. An event, win every game that's on your schedule, and not even be in the money game. Like that doesn't make any sense to me at all. I we don't need to spend the next however long going off about this. I did hear, I shared a tweet with Joe where it was kind of the sounded like the event organizers were doubling down, and then literally the same day it like seemed like they were walking it back a little bit and like open to something different next year. But I don't know about you, but this whole idea of, we're gonna have an event where we're gonna do parts of it one week and then like that just sounds like a scheduling nightmare. And I'm not saying it can't be done, but I don't know. I feel like the kind of yes, there was great basketball and great teams, but you've kind of used up my like my goodwill towards you. You just got to get it right next time. Like you got the good basketball, just do something. You're right. Just do something normal for the format and be done with it.
Exactly. It's all about the teams and the players and the branding of it. It's not the European format is not going to work. It's just how it works. So, um, yeah, we'll be excited next year for the matchups of it. But again, the logistics and the tournament format will be something we will be criticizing, I'm sure, as more news comes out about that. I do appreciate that maybe they took a step back after they heard from fans. Maybe that shows a little bit of like, oh, maybe we should do what the fans want. But it's still very dicey with the world of college basketball and college sports in general. All right, Greg, the next one we have is the Rady Children's Invitational. This was won by TCU, Greg. Uh, Team we talked about gave Michigan a run for their money earlier. We thought, oh, Michigan maybe has some issues that we didn't expect, but really, Jamie Dixon has this team rolling. They are 5-2 now. Maybe not the best, especially because they lost to New Orleans and they lost to Michigan. But they beat Florida and then they beat Wisconsin to win this championship. Florida, we have mentioned their issues with guard depth, with guard play in general, maybe being an issue. Wisconsin, a team that does have good guard play with Nick Boyd and John Blackwell, but this TCU team, I think, was a lot better than people give it credit for. They're not a team that I think has a ton of flash, and that loss to New Orleans is definitely eye opening. But that's what we see every year. There's teams with quad three and quad four losses who end up uh, kind of on the bubble or in the mix, and maybe that's TCU this year. David Punch, 13 points a game almost, 7 rebounds. Jaden Pierre, 12 points a game, 2.1 assists. They got players that have been around a little bit. Those couple guys are going to have to keep on leading them, but um, I guess we'll say tumultuous resume so far, but great week for a
Yeah.
TCU.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I would challenge you to find me another resume that looks like wins against Florida and Wisconsin, and then losses to New Orleans and Michigan. It just, I don't know. That's a new one. Joe, what's your, we're ruling teams out of winning the national title. What is your meter on Florida? And I don't think
Hmm.
I'm ready to do that yet, but I'm saying, like, how worried are you that we come into the season talking, hey, they may go for a repeat and whatnot, but it, it's like it's starting to get. Granted, TCU may be better than we thought, but it's still starting to get where it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say back-to-back champions don't happen very often. I know we just had one in the sport with UConn a couple years ago, but I would say the chances were already minimal because of that. But definitely the guard. I would have said the guard depth would have been bad. The guard play has been bad as well because both Boogie Fland, who is shooting 25 below 25% from three, and Xavier Lee, who's a good shooter, is 21.6% from three. It's just bad. The guard play is bad. I think it makes it a tough sell, and maybe Florida should have tried harder to keep a Denzel Aberdeen in the mix. Maybe they should have tried to get other transfers to come in along with these guys, so that if it didn't work out, that maybe they had something else to go. Um, I would say, yeah, they're definitely like at this point in the season they would be under consideration. I would not cross them off yet. We will have to finalize how we're going to do this and what number we want to get down to. And maybe we'll say by January, Greg, we need to be down to 25 or something, just to make it interesting. And then after that, we can go, two a week or something until March. We'll figure that part out later. But they're definitely like one team I'm worried about. Front court's great, but when it gets to March, you need Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee to play really, really well. Um, Plavzar has been okay for them as a backup guard. He's starting to get a lot more minutes too, but I don't know if you can win it all with just those three guys and two of them not playing up to the potential for sure. All right, so that is the Rady's Children's Invitational. Greg, we have some good games to get to that were not involved with the tournaments. We're going to start with the North Carolina Michigan State game on Thursday. This was a game that we mentioned was not a bracket type event that they were doing with the Fort Myers tip off this year. But Michigan State wins this one against UNC 74 to 58. We must note Seth Trimble still out with that arm injury that we talked about, I think, last week's show or 2 weeks ago show. Jeremy Fears, 19 points, 7 assists. Michigan State dominated in the paint again. only 5 threes, won the rebounding battle 37-30. Uh, they had UNC's guard play is just going to have to be better, and it's very tough to get good play out of the guards when you are missing Seth Trimble and have some transfers who maybe didn't step up. Cale Wilson was still good with 18 points, 7 rebounds, but if they don't get good guard play, they are a team that I think is not a top 25 team and borderline NCAA tournament team.
So Michigan State came into the Kentucky game shooting 22% from three. You want to take a gander at what their team shooting percentage from three is right now?
Well, they went 50% in this game. 30.
It is 34%,
Wow.
which for reference, I just, thinking about teams that I know chuck a lot of threes, they're like up 1.5% off Bama. Granted, Bama's got like 150 more attempts as a team. So, but percentage wise, if you want to think about that for a second, um, I I tell me, okay, tell me if I'm the only one that still feels like I just have a little bit of trouble wanting to trust this Michigan State team. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because like even with okay, the 3-point shooting has gotten better. I just don't feel like I look at the floor and I see snipers, you know. I I feel like they have a lot of others. They have a great interior game. They have a great distributor in Jeremy Fears. They have a lot of other things going for them. But I like don't think they're going to hold 34% 3-point shooting. What's the number they have to be at to be an elite team? I don't know. We've seen Arizona on more than one occasion this year win games shooting like 8 threes for the whole game. So some people are zigging and maybe they can zag. I don't know. I mean, I tell me if you have this is a total gut vibe type. Like I just don't know that I want to trust this team yet. And they've done nothing but win games.
I trust them, but I think they have a key component that, like a lot of times when you have just a team with a bunch of athletes who can't shoot, it's a mess. But when you have a guy like Jeremy Fears who sets up his teammates that well, I think that makes it easier. They seems like they can make threes, but they need to be the team of like we're going to work it into the paint first. It's not going to be the Alabama. It's going to be pass it into the paint, take open threes. That's I think it'd be better for them when you have what the best pure point guard in college basketball, the best, I will say the best passing point guard in college basketball. That makes it better for people. 12 points, 9.7 assists so far this year. That's huge. So I'm with you. I would love to give this team just like an average shooting guard from another team. Like I feel like that's really needed. I think that does limit their ceiling in March. Do I think they can get through it? Maybe have someone develop, down the stretch like they've had in the past. Like Jace Richardson, like last year, he wasn't really playing that many minutes at this point of the season for Michigan State, and then he really popped off. Can they have that happen? Maybe, but I think that's the one thing is like we're seeing, like you said with Arizona, we're seeing this in the sport this year where it's like there are a lot of different teams who are built differently, and that's what we love about college basketball. It's not just everyone shooting threes, it's not everyone running the same things like in the NBA. That's you're right. Like that is the big thing is like how far can they go without a shooting guard, without a small forward who can really light it up from three or be someone who can score outside of the post and Jeremy Fears setting up teammates. But I don't know. I think gun to my head, I would say this is a Sweet 16 team. Do I feel confident about them going farther? No. But I don't know how. I think the flip side of that is how confident am I in anyone this year outside of maybe Arizona, Michigan, and the teams talked about. So,
Yeah,
um,
but you that list of how confident am I in anyone this year is probably longer than it is in most years. Like Purdue, Houston, Michigan, and yes, I know Houston lost, and we'll get to talking about that. But like I feel like the list of I'm confident that this is an elite team is probably maybe only one or two teams longer, but it's probably longer than it is in a normal year at this point. That's how I feel.
I don't know. I think
Like I feel like there's five teams that I would, you know, put money on depending on the odds to win the NCAA tournament right now. And that's more than I'd say early, December in most years.
I I don't know. I feel like that's the kind of the thing is like we just talked about the parity of the sport. I don't know if it's got much parity if we have five, six teams that are like you're saying they're more than last year that we believe in as contenders. That's kind of makes it a little bit contradictory. But I mean, I'm with you. There are teams I like. I think that just at this point in the season, like if you're going to say, I don't know, let's just say Purdue gets matched up with in the Sweet 16 with Tennessee. Right now, they'd be like a 4 seed. I don't think that. I think that's closer than people would think, right? I don't know. Or Arizona versus Illinois, or Michigan versus Florida. Maybe not Florida right now, but something like that. It's I think that makes it a little bit different. I guess like there is a tier where it's like the top maybe 7 teams, 8 teams in the country, where it's like I believe in these teams to be solid, to be pretty good team, and then after that. But I kind of still think like we talked about how much we liked Illinois last week, and we're gonna get to one of their games here in a second, but like I don't know. I could see a team like Illinois being just as talented by the end of the year as some of the teams at the top too. It's kind of my thing. But
So I think you saying tiers kind of gives me, and I'm fleshing this out live, like this whole, this is just a train of thought where I'm talking about the parody, but I guess maybe a better way to kind of think and put it is I feel like for me, there's more teams on that top tier in that tier one than there are in a regular year at this point. But I think the gap between tier one, tier two, and tier three is probably smaller than it is on a normal year. But I also think there is a chasm, between like your tier three and whatever tier four looks like. And I know that's all generalities to speak, but when we stop talking about power conference teams plus Gonzaga, maybe plus San Diego State, I just think there's a huge fall off after that.
yeah,
But I still think these top, 4, 5, 6 teams, I'm like, okay, I would put my faith in them maybe more on the longevity of the season, as opposed to a single game kind of deal.
yeah, and it's fair if you don't want to put Michigan State. This is kind of how it started, but in the same tier as Purdue, Arizona, Michigan, Duke, UConn, Louisville, Houston. That if you don't want to put them in the same group, I think that's totally fair right now because of their weakness. I think that all those teams have weaknesses that could be exploited, and I don't necessarily believe in any of them so far too much. Like I still have my issues with all of these teams. Not saying that they're not great, not saying they can't be Sweet 16 teams. I think, gun to my head, the majority of those would be teams I'd pick to go to at least Sweet 16. But I think that's a fair point to say, like, the construction of this team, in the same way we say the strategy of, like, Alabama, the construction of this team might be the one thing that holds us back from picking them to go far. All right, Greg, let's go to another game on Thursday. This was the Thanksgiving Classic. It was Duke and Arkansas. Um, a game that, we mentioned last week that we were excited to watch the guard play of Arkansas go up against Duke, who has some questionable guard play. This was another good game for Cam Boozer, 35 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. He mentioned after the game, they didn't double me. That's how he's able to score. That's pretty true for most John Calipari teams. They don't really double guys like that, but for someone who's that talented, maybe you need to. There's still questions about the supporting cast and what they can do without the point guard and the creation from a guard spot. Isaiah Evans can shoot, but do they have anyone who can create besides him? Is that going to be an issue? That's something that was not addressed on this day, but that he carried the team for himself in this one. Arkansas, some interesting things going on with that program. Greg, we can talk about too. Acuff, 21 points. Malik Thomas, 13 points. Um, DJ Wagner, only 16 minutes. You would have thought that he'd play a little bit more. And it's just this, I don't know. Is this just because John Calipari refuses to go small with his teams? He needs length on the court. He just has to do it. Can you not fit your 5 best players on the court? I'm not saying DJ Wagner is the greatest thing ever, but I do think that when his experience is worth something, one, and he was not playing the greatest game here, but you're also not getting great minutes out of some of these guys. Like Nick Pringle fouled out, had 5 fouls in like less than 20 minutes played, and he's a center. And yes, I get you need some centers at times, but you know you have Billy Richmond, you have Carter Knox, you have Darius Acuff, you have Malik Thomas, you have guys who are guards and wings that should be playing more minutes and have to find a way to get them more minutes. And it just seems like DJ Wagner got the short end of the stick, and maybe that's the right call. But it's just like I don't know. I think they have too many guards, not enough bigs who are really producing at the way they should.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add to that. I think, just on the Duke side, choosing not to double Cam Boozer, and I get it because schematically, like, every time you double, or you dig down, like you're creating a mismatch somewhere else, and or you're creating space somewhere else. Like that's the whole point of basketball. Um, every time you beat a double team with these high pick and rolls, all right, then you know, you're playing one up on from the free throw line down kind of deal. But it feels like when time and time again this guy's proven what he can do near the basket, like make somebody else beat you, especially when we just talked about, and I know Caleb Foster had a decent game, but I would have liked to see them force the issue away from Cam Boozer a little bit. That's a choice that Calipari made. And there were times in this game where Arkansas was up and, it got a little scary at times, but I just think ultimately the result, ended up what we probably all expected. Maybe didn't get there how we thought we'd get there, but I was also surprised at, the minutes DJ Wagner saw. I maybe Kyle's just trying to find something there, but I mean, again, I don't want to sit here and repeat, but kind of hit the nail on the head. More guards than probably need. They probably need something more on the inside if this team wants to be anything special.
Yeah, it's got to be a way to play more of the guards too. And I get he doesn't want to go small, but that's just crazy. And in this game, maybe it's different. Maybe against other teams, we'll start doing that. And except for Duke, Greg, we'll be asking the question all year: Can they get by with what they have? Like, is the guard play going to be an issue? And again, like gun to my head, I don't know how much I believe in this team to go far in the tournament because we've seen guys like this is nothing against Cam Boozer. It's more about the sporting cast and the roster construction, like we talked about. But like, is Kevin Durant to get out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament? It doesn't matter how talented you are. So um, that's something to monitor, something we'll watch. I'm sure they'll figure things out. John Shire, we mentioned last week, good X's and O's coach. Greg, let's get to the game on Friday. Illinois and UConn played. UConn wins 74 to 61. Kylan Boswell had 25 points for Illinois, but Greg, we jinxed Andrei Stojakovic 3 points, 1 of 7 from the floor. We'll have to start looking at a podcast curse and keep a track of that as we go forward. But still like him long term. I'm sure you do too for March and everything. But that was a bad performance. Have to note here, UConn didn't really have players standing out. Like Solo Bowl had 15 points. He didn't really shoot the ball that efficiently. They had 19 assists. Malachi Smith had 9 of them off the bench. This is just more about UConn having great ball movement, and I thought that meant a lot in this game, as opposed to Illinois. Not saying they didn't have good ball movement, but like this is a team UConn I think is really well prepared and has guys who want to share the ball, and that's gonna play all year long.
Yeah, Terrace Reed back, Braylon Mullins back for UConn, and this team doesn't look like they missed a beat. I feel like one of the earlier games that we talked about is, this team looks cohesive. They look together, and sometimes when you take out and then reintroduce pieces, and Braylon Mullins is coming in, for the first time all season since he had a preseason injury. Um, you know, Sometimes that can mess with the flow, but this is a quality opponent and a quality win for them. Um, Obviously, neither of them played, a whole heck of a lot of minutes, but I wouldn't expect that in a game they were pretty well in control of, and both of them just having come back. This doesn't really move the needle either way for me on Illinois. I still like Illinois. I think UConn's really good. You know, I this didn't really change what I thought of this team. I don't know if you felt that way. Um, Obviously, Stojakovic has a bad game. The team as a whole shoots 6 of 29 from three. I mean, like that's. I feel like this team. I feel like I rag on Bama a lot for taking a bunch of threes, but this is a team where I feel like just the way they play and the shooters they have on the floor, they're going to get a lot of open looks from three, but based on ball movement, not just based on run down the court and take a transition three type. Um, I think they're a better shooting team than this, and I mean I don't think I know they're a better shooting team than this, and I would expect you know, that this is going to be a team that it, this is this so this is where it gets cloudy for me because I think they are really good, but if you start stacking them against Purdue and Michigan and like I feel like I like them more than Michigan State at times, even though Michigan State's, you know, handled their opponents, but I don't know, man. There are teams I just have this gut feeling about that I feel like I like. I think we did this last year too, where I was like, I just can't get can't quit this team, and this is one of them that I feel like I'm going to end up trusting too long, um, or waiting on them to kind of click, and maybe it won't happen. But I like the pieces that are there still, and I this game doesn't necessarily scare me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's hard to. I don't know. The shooting was bad this game. 32% from the floor, 21% from three. I think more often than not, they're going to do better. 90% of the time, they're going to shoot better. 95% of the time, they're going to shoot better than that. This is still a lot of moving parts from guys overseas, from guys who are injured and fitting back into the lineup, from freshmen getting involved. And you have Kylan Boswell, who's one of the guys who've stayed around and maybe have some stability for this team. 25 points, 8 of 16 shooting. He can shoot the ball well from deep, but he was the guy ready to go. Tommy Slavovic's 11 points. He's one of their attorneys as well. That like I think it still very much is, especially in these big games, finding out these guys develop as the season goes on, and like finding out how they can impact the game more, and be more beneficial on a consistent basis. I think will be key down the stretch. But I'm not selling any stock in them. I think again it's just more. This is UConn. This is what they do, and I think last year was a down year, getting you know the 8 seed, and then now it's like they're back to what they were before this. And I don't. I'm not saying that they're maybe as good as those teams, but they are up at least at the top of the sport at the very least. All right, Greg, that is the recap for Feast Week. We are going to get into our picks. As mentioned, this is a big, big week of college basketball. I can't remember a year of college basketball where there was week after week where I'm sitting there like, that's a good game. That's a good, whether it was Champions Classic way back when, whether it was the week after, where we're kind of surprised there were still some good games, to Feast Week, to now. There are some big time matchups. A lot of it, the football schedule lightens up. Regular season for college football is over. There's a lot more time on the airways or on the TV ways, whatever you want to call it, for college basketball games. And we're going to talk about them, Greg, because there's a lot to talk to. Let's get to the first one on Tuesday night. We have Florida and Duke as part of the ACC SEC Challenge.
Uh, Florida really hasn't given me anything to make me want to pick them, especially on the road. I'm going to take Duke. This is a ranked unranked, so of course we're going to talk about it. But I mean, the only curious thing is going to be that great interior game that Florida has, and all that length between, Hauk and all of them. I mean, maybe that'll throw Boozer through a loop. Just seeing all those long arms playing three big guys like obviously Golden's kind of have forced to do at this point because it seems like the guard play isn't that doesn't it's not what it was last year, and it may get better, but I think I'm sold on. Okay, it's not it's at the beginning of the year I thought, okay, maybe they can get somewhere close to where they were last year, but I think I'm sold on that idea. They're going to settle for their guards being average, and they haven't even been that up to this point. So, um, seeing how they look at, or how Boozer handles, just a lot of longer, lankier bodies on the floor, just going to be something interesting for me.
Yeah, I think that will be tough for him to deal with personally. I think the team, it'd be a lot easier to pick against Duke if this was a team who did have those guards. We saw, Arkansas had some very good guards, although discombobulated with the minutes and everything. But if there was a team like that was able to attack maybe Duke, or maybe have some defensive presence for the guards and maybe stop some of the creation, I don't know. That's where I think that the advantage could be had. But in this game, I think Duke will have, if Boozer is shut down, I think even like Isaiah Evans and Kale Foster will be able to get theirs against this Florida team. So I'll go Duke. I'll go Duke by a decent margin, maybe 10 points or something like that, especially at home. But and you're right. I think Florida just at the way they've looked the first part of the season, they have a lot of work to do to kind of buy back into any thought that they could be, you know, an SEC contender, even before being a national contender, being an SEC contender. All right, next one up, we have UConn and Kansas. This one is going to be in Kansas, Lawrence Fieldhouse. Greg, who are you going with?
So I always like to double check and make sure. Yeah. Okay. I am picking UConn. Um, but because there was so much that happened in the players era, we didn't really get a chance to kind of dive into. Kansas had a pretty good players era without Darren Peterson. Maybe this is one of those things that him being out and they, Bill Self kind of gets a hold of more of what some of these other pieces are. Um, I did just look, Joe. I don't know if you've seen anything as far as Darren Peterson. It looks like the most recent update is basically Bill Self saying we're not going to say anything until tomorrow. We're recording this on Monday. This game is on Tuesday night. I, I still, I mean, it is in Lawrence, but I still feel like even with Darren Peterson, I'm gonna pick UConn. But knowing what they just pulled off and how they played in the players era, if Darren Peterson comes back and plays, I feel like this is going to be a lot more interesting game than if you'd have looked and previewed this game, you know, last Sunday, like before the player, like, you know what I mean? Like if you'd have looked at this game last week, you'd have said, okay, nothing burger. And now it's like this might actually be something. I'm still picking UConn even on the road. Um, I hate picking all favorites, which I feel like I'm doing a lot of this week, but I think this is going to be a better game than this may be one of the best games of the week, honestly.
Maybe I think it's important to note that there are some teams out there. It's another one in a second who may have looked bad or have some losses, and they just have played really good teams. Kansas is one of them. They have two quad one losses. That just came out today, so we know that. Um, UConn's only favored by 2.5 in this one. I do think UConn wins. I think they cover. It might be decently easily, especially if Darren Peterson's out. I don't know if Kansas has the juice to really keep up with them, to be honest. But I don't think that means Kansas is too bad of a team. I don't know if they're national contender good this year, even with Peterson. I don't know if they're top 20 good with even with Peterson, but I do know that they can compete on their home floor. And I do think that they maybe got too bad of a rap for how they lost some of their games. So UConn to win on the road. Greg, next one up, we have same Tuesday. A lot of good games on this Tuesday. We have UNC and UK. This one is in Lexington as part of that ACC SEC Men's Challenge.
So I'm gonna pick Carolina, and this is probably more based on I'm kind of selling Kentucky a little bit right now. Um, that's not to say I won't, buy back in, but I know I went and just kind of to go against you. I picked Carolina against Michigan State last week. I was teetering on that one. That didn't work out for me. Joe, tell me if this is wrong. Is Caleb Wilson going to be the best player on the floor in this game?
Uh,
Because that,
Ortega,
that that's kind of if Otega Owe isn't going to be what we
yeah,
thought he was going to be, that's kind of the only thing moving because I'm not necessarily like I said I'm this is kind of more me selling Kentucky. This is two teams that are really in flux, and obviously Carolina's got the injury that they're dealing with. Kentucky's also without Jalen Lowe, so they've got their own issues. But I think that's kind of the thing that's just going to sway me. All right, they got the best player on the floor, and or at least that's the way it looks right now. So I'll take them.
yeah. I on paper, I think this is Kentucky win pretty easily. I
And
think
it should be. It should
UN,
be.
UNC's. I even saying Caleb Wilson's the best player on the floor. I just they don't have much, man. Without Trimble, they just don't have much, and that's the tough part. Is like that. You'll probably be right. That's the way things have gone for Kentucky this year. Again, where do they get their scoring? It might be just going in the post with Wilson and Visar. that might be it. But I would like to think that if you're going to go on the road and win some games, you're going to need some better guard play. Ryan Evans, less than 8 points per game. That should be with how many games? It's been 5 games that he's missed out of 7 for UNC. That number needs to be higher if you're going to be any sustainable good. I think there's a chance if I don't know how long Trimble is going to be out. It's kind of like it seemed like it was a little bit of a timetable that was not very clear. They have Kentucky, they have Georgetown. In a couple weeks, they have Ohio State. There's that's all three losable games for UNC. I do not like this team at all. The way that's constructed, I think Caleb Wilson's covering up a lot. Again, it probably means they're going to win and be fine, and I'll be eating my words here soon. But I really don't think this team is a top 25 team. I don't think this team is. I think we're going to be talking about them as possible bubble team, maybe 7 seed, maybe 6 seed. I'll say conservatively 6 or 7 seed by the end of the time. Caleb Wilson's got to do a lot of heavy lifting with Seth Trimble out. When he's back, maybe they're a little bit better. Maybe can compete for a 4 or 5 seed. But they're ranked 16th right now. They beat Kansas. That was good. That was at home. I don't see it with this team. But we've been wrong before. All right, let's go to the next game, Greg. We have on Wednesday Louisville and Arkansas. This one is also part of the ACC SEC Challenge.
I am picking again. I always like to double check because I don't want to pick. I don't want to. I am going to take Arkansas. I think Louisville's obviously they're going to rely on shooting a lot. I know they have Sanadra Frew, who kind of puts his hard hat on and does some work inside, but I like these Arkansas guards and just the athleticism of Arkansas in general to kind of give Louisville maybe a little something they haven't seen yet this year.
Yeah, I think that's a bad pick at all. I'm going Louisville. I think even on the road, I think they get the win. I think for what they have in Arkansas's guards, Michael Brown is, I mean, just as good, if not better, just as good. 17 points per game this year. And I think they just have a little bit more of, they have that dynamic guard with athleticism, but they have that shooting. And I think that's going to be the difference is they just can beat you in so many different ways if they play the right game. But John Calipari has had a lot of success against Louisville in his career, but I'm going with the Cardinals in this one. Greg, off to Friday. We're going to start with the crosstown shootout. Not a ranked game, a rivalry game that is from our hometown city. So it is important to pick it for us. But Greg, who are you going with?
I don't. If this Xavier team, who has had a rough start, but maybe pick things up a little bit. If they can't beat this UC team, I'm gonna be upset. They're currently, as we're recording, they're actively up double digits on St. Francis. So take that for what you will. But I don't think this is the year that I want to have to hear about
French toast nibblers.
Crosstown shootout. So I'll take Xavier.
I'm taking Xavier too. It's important to note Xavier might be the most improved team from the start of the season till now, and they went from a very bad team to kind of okay. and Cincinnati is a team that a lot of high expectations. Their best win is Dayton, who I don't think is very good, despite what Greg thinks. And they lost to Eastern Michigan this week. Maybe that'll be a wake up call for them. I do think that they have a bit more talent than Xavier, but it's on the road, even if it is same city. I'll go Xavier. I don't like either of these teams. I think they both missed the tournament, but I'll say Xavier.
Valid. It wouldn't feel right if we just didn't even touch on this game. But if this wasn't, one of the top 3-4 rivalry games in college basketball, we would not be talking about this game on this podcast.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Greg, let's go to the other game on Friday. This is the Kentucky Gonzaga game. This one's in Nashville. As a reminder, they signed that series where they played one up in Spokane, one in Lexington at Rupp Arena, and then one neutral site. I guess technically two neutral sites because the other one in Spokane was neutral site. But this one is in Nashville. Should be a fun game.
I think it is going to be a fun game. I don't think it's going to be as fun as last year's Gonzaga Kentucky game. But I'm going to take Gonzaga again, just kind of selling on Kentucky a little bit. Obviously, Gonzaga got the brakes blown off of them at the Players Era by Michigan, but then again, who didn't? So I think this Gonzaga team is a lot better than we would have thought preseason. They didn't give him enough credit, which I'm sure Mark Few loves because he probably loves playing that role. But this is again, I do like Gonzaga, but I'm just kind of selling on Kentucky until I don't know, see something that signs of life, signs of fight, signs of something that makes me believe, and maybe this Jalen Lowe injury is not going to be as long as we thought it was, and he comes back and this team becomes something again. But um, I don't even close to home for Kentucky. I don't really feel any reason to pick them here.
Yeah, I mean, I understand this pick more than the other one, to be honest. I'm picking Gonzaga in this one. I I mean, to be honest, my pick for Kentucky beat UNC is more about UNC being bad than it is Kentucky being good. So I will understand you. Um, here's the thing. I think Gonzaga wins this game. I think the post play is good. I think they're finding out about their guard play, whether that's Tyon Grant Foster or Mario St. Cypri. He's playing more minutes now. He's seemingly winning the point guard battle, whatever you want to call it. 45% from three, 5.1 assists per game, 1.9 steals. That's the difference maker. Adam Miller's, been solid for them as well as a guard. They can, I think, when those guards continue to develop and play more as the season goes on, it's going to be better for them. The path for Kentucky to win this game is obviously getting Otega Oweh to attack the basket like he has in the past. He has not really done that as much, but that's the vulnerabilities. Like maybe you can get the guards before they're fully developed, before they really are a cohesive unit, before Mario St. Cypri really figures things out. Because it looks like Greg, this guy looks like he's about to figure it out and be a guy who can just, I don't know, dish dimes all day long. He's already halfway there, but that's the path. Is like, hey, TK's gotten into a lot of foul trouble in his career for how long he's been in college. Get him in foul trouble. The guard play isn't super dynamic, but I can kind of see the kernels of it. That's the path for Kentucky. But I do think Gonzaga is able to win. They just have so polished in the post. All right, we're going to move on to Saturday. There is a lot of good games on Saturday. As a reminder, the college football regular season is over, and it is just conference championship week, so less games on the airways. Greg, we're going to start it off with Iowa State and Purdue.
Yeah, I do have a bone to pick with our producer because whoever put our outline together checked, double checked, triple checked, even sent it to you, Joe. So you got a little bit of culpability. And until about 5 seconds ago, this game was not on our outline. This is one of the reasons I'm glad I just paid. I probably looked at scores for the upcoming week, like games for the upcoming week. I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times each day, and I missed this one each time. But then again, so did you. Now you probably only looked at it once. So our producer will take most of the blame. But yeah, this would have been if we'd have finished the podcast and gone back and I said, "Oops." I even picked this game in our picks and I still didn't have it.
I think I would have caught it because I'm following around on the scoreboard before I pick, and that's why I may have just glossed over the picks that you had up and I didn't look at it too much. But you're right, that would have been bad. So I'm glad
Okay.
you fixed
Well,
it.
now back to the basketball. I'm going to pick the games in Mackey. I'm going to take Purdue. Um, Iowa State didn't have the most challenging players era schedule, but they did go 3-0. So there's that. I don't think this is as good of a team as last year's Iowa State team, but I still think they might be better than I expected coming into the year. Especially, an Iowa State team that middle of the year, once they really get that Otzelberger patented tough nosed defense, man, this team's going to be dangerous. But I think Purdue wins this one.
Me too. I think this is a game where if it were played in March, or maybe flip by the time these teams develop and kind of grow. Taman Lipsey, who's only played 5 games out of the 7, 18.4 points per game. We talked about him having to score more this year already. He's living up to that. I think they just need to keep on finding those other guys to step in. Joshua Jefferson's been good. Momcilovic has been good. And just finding those other guys who can step up and score points on the perimeter outside of Lipsey. And they're starting to get some guys like Killian Torre, but they're going to need to have more consistent play. And I think just as the season goes on, they're going to be better and better. Whereas Purdue, like, how much better can a team be where all the same guys have been there for the last 3 years? So Purdue in this one, but neutral site, March, maybe a different pick there. All right, next one we have is Duke and Michigan State. This one is going to be in East Lansing. another big game at noon on Fox.
So, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the reason this game is being played was from a canceled COVID game. So this was originally a Champions Classic game.
Hmm.
Gets canceled for COVID, and Shire basically says, "Hey, in a year where we're not playing in the Champions Classic, we'll come to East Lansing to kind of like make this game up or whatever." Because these teams would play each other essentially. Would it be every 3 years in the Champions Classic? So, but they're playing this. It basically is a makeup game from I don't know whatever. I know it's a couple of years ago, but that's why we're getting this game, and I love it because big week for Cam Boozer. We already talked about their first game and what they're going to see against Florida, and I don't think he's going up against anyone super athletically gifted that's going to be guarding him unless they choose to put Cohen Carr on him, which just sounds like a terrible idea. But um, I still think with as much as Michigan State packs the paint, these next two games for Cam Boozer are going to be really telling for what we're going to get. If he goes up and has a good game against the Florida Bigs, and then has a good game against Michigan State, it might be time to hit hyperspeed for him and to just go ahead and give him the Naismith.
I disagree with that. I think Cohen Carr needs to be the guy guarding. I'm
I
with.
I feel like even with the 50-inch vertical, if Cam Boozer's got back to the basket type stuff, it doesn't matter how high he can jump. He can't jump over his back. I mean that I just if he was a you know solely face to the basket, shooting type big, okay, but I feel like Carr is going to struggle, getting back down. That's my thought.
I feel like there's more help near the basket where if you have big guys guard him and they got to go be dragged away from the basket. I think that's where the issues might come. I think all the time about a lot of the guys who are bigger guys who handle the ball. They're so used to growing up where everyone puts a big guy on them, and it's like okay, I'll drive right by him. That's great. I know guys like Kevin Durant, who's 7 foot tall, struggled the most with guys like Tony Allen, who was 6'4". And yes, it's different players. He doesn't play with his back to the basket as much, but I think there's more ability to help if you put Cohen Carr on him. I don't know if it'll happen. I don't know what the plan is here. Maybe Jackson Kohler, he's got a little bit of ability to kind of move a little bit, not as much as I would like for Cam Boozer, but who does have that? So you're right. That's the key matchup. Can they find someone to put on Cam Boozer? How are the doubles going to come? How is the help going to come? I think Duke
Joe,
still wins either
I,
way, but
I this is yeah okay. I don't think I said I'm picking Duke, but I'm spitballing. This is a live thought, and if Izzo hears this and wants to try it out, go ahead. Tell me if this is a crazy idea. What if they don't play man? What if they play 2-3 and put Carr on the block? So Carr is coming over help defense. He's coming over to SWAT help defense those looks from Boozer. I'm just spitballing. Yes, they have Isaiah Evans. You're gonna kind of have to cheat out if he's on your side, but that might not be the worst idea. I know everybody hates on zone defense, but for what
I,
we've talked about the deficiencies of this Duke team, like that might not be the worst idea.
yeah, I don't think it would be either. I think ultimately Duke shoots the ball a little bit too well, and you could still use Boozer to set up the shooters. But why not throw it in a couple possessions, see what happens? Why,
Right, I'm not saying do it the whole game. It's not a Boeheimism type game, but I think that kind of like you're watching a game and you see teams mix it in. This might be a game where I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden you know 2, 3, 4 straight possessions they're playing zone just to mix something in, and give him a different look. And if obviously if it works, they're not going to go away from it. But
yeah, I think back to like those Xavier teams under Chris Mack who they'd play man a lot of the game, and then all of a sudden they throw in this 1-3-1 zone, and teams just crumbled against it. They don't practice against it if they don't see it that often. Even if they play like Xavier, if they practice against it, it's hard. And if you can stop Cam Boozer's momentum going to the basket, that's a huge win. If they force him to make tough entry passes into him if he is in the post, that's a huge win because that's not an art that is taught very well anymore. So
Well,
that
not that I think this is apples to apples, but Dayton did it against BYU, and they've done it a couple times this year, and it seems like teams just kind of don't know what to do with that 1-3-1. You know,
yeah,
like they it feels like okay, we've all grown up and we know how to attack a 2-3 zone and all that stuff, but it feels like that 1-3-1 is just different enough that it just kind of it's just kind of like doing that, you know, hey, you're pressing against a team that likes to play slow just so they have less time in the shot clock type deal. It's you're just throwing a team off their rhythm, which sometimes can be enough to give you an edge in a game.
it could be, could be. All right, so we both have Duke there just to make sure that's clear. Next one up, Greg, we have Louisville and Indiana. This one is in Indianapolis, close enough for both fan bases.
Yeah. What's the podcast budget? Can we get tickets to this game?
We can't because we have plans this weekend, but we could.
That's right. I did forget we do have non-podcast, non-basketball affiliated plans. That's a great point.
Those could be canceled. That's not even set in stone yet by what we're doing. So we'll see.
I feel like we'd lose some loyal listeners if we canceled plans. If they whether I don't mean maybe they listen, maybe they don't, but
Yeah, I
they would
know.
definitely never listen if we canceled plans on on that. But I'm gonna pick Louisville. I just haven't honestly haven't had as much good basketball has been on. I really haven't had a chance to watch a lot of Indiana ball. I know I trust Louisville, and I don't know that I want to pick them to lose twice in the same week. So I'm going to pick them to win this game.
Yeah, obviously I'm not a fan of either of these teams. I'm going Louisville. I like the how athletic Michael Brown is. I like that problem is going to be for Indiana. Indiana is a good shooting team. Tucker DeVries, Lamar Wilkerson, both are very good. I do wonder how the other guys are going to step up in big games on this team. But I'll go Louisville in this one in this neutral site game where again it's close enough that both fan bases can get to it pretty easily. Probably if this goes Indiana's way, like this is a huge we're back moment. Like I'm serious. Like this is like not like maybe we're going to win the championship, but like oh we have been bad for so long since Tom Crean's one season with Indiana where they were like the one seed, right? 10 years ago now, 15 years, I don't even remember what it was, 10, 15 years ago now. This is a huge, huge win if they get it. It's not the end all be all that they're going to win the championship, but this is, oh, we are good and we are back. All right, Illinois and Tennessee. This one, Greg, is in Nashville as well.
Oh man, I feel like I just said a lot of things, a lot of nice things about Illinois and how I trust Illinois, and here I am. I'm going to take Tennessee. Um, they get beat on the last day of the Players Era by Kansas, but we're maybe reformulating some opinions about Kansas. But I still, after they, so this is again, so much happened this week. We didn't talk about it individual, but they beat Houston at the Players Era. I mean,
Yep.
I texted Joe immediately. I said I'm starting to feel a lot better about kind of going out on I won't say a huge limb. It's not like I picked you know someone that was supposed to be in the basement to win the SEC, but I just it kind of a little bit of validation, like okay, maybe this might make sense. And I think this game, it's in Nashville, so it's not a home game, but basically it's down the road. But I'll take Tennessee.
I'm going to take Tennessee as well. There are some things where like I don't trust this team overall. But I think that defense that Rick Barnes has and the matchup problem that Nate Ament is going to be too much for a lot of teams. I do wonder, like the same thing we're saying with Michigan State, can we have a good shooting guard to go with this team? Can we have a guy? Can we have better guard play in general outside of Jacoby Gillespie? Because Nate Ament, he's on the wing. He's not traditional big guy, but you're going to need to go small in some of these tournament games. We need to see some more guard play more guys who regards play more minutes and see how that works out. But I mean, that 1-2 punch of Gillespie and Ament is very, very good. And I only imagine that they're going to shoot the ball from three even a little bit better as the season goes on. So, going Tennessee in this one, not going to give up on Illinois. Tough game, and honestly, neutral site game, but a little bit closer um, to Tennessee here. So, Greg, we'll move on to the last game we're going to pick, Auburn and Arizona.
I am picking Arizona. There's not really anything that would make me want to pick Auburn, but this is a ranked on ranked game. So again, if we didn't at least mention this game in our quote unquote marquee games of the week, our picks, I would feel remiss. Um, so I'll take Arizona. Obviously, they're in that top tier for me right now, and I feel like losing this game at home, even against a ranked Auburn team, might be something that kind of knocks them out of that tier for me. But there is nothing that I have seen thus far from them this year that makes me think that that is remotely possible.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm probably not picking Auburn against a ranked team the rest of the year. I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen, but just looking at the current schedule, maybe Florida. Florida's still ranked at that point and still having some of the similar issues. It's just they're too up and down. It's cool they got to win against Oregon. Oregon looks like they're awful this year in kind of surprising fashion because they do have Shellstad and Biddle. But and they beat St. John's. We don't like what is St. John's right now? I don't even know. So I'm going with Arizona pretty easily in this one, which probably means they'll make it a game, maybe win. But at home for Arizona, they get the win there. Greg, you have a couple games to watch you wanted to note, so let's go over those real quick before we wrap it up.
Yeah, Joe and I both talked a little bit about Syracuse and how they may be a little bit better, or a little bit more on our radar than we would have thought in the preseason. Joe, if you haven't checked out his Twitter, has a list of all of the players' sons that are playing in college basketball right now, which includes Carmelo Anthony's son, who's on Syracuse. They are playing Tennessee on Tuesday. Um, Obviously, Tennessee's got a much bigger game at the end of the week. I still think, if they're looking ahead and Syracuse is like, hey, we're trying to get a notch on our belt for a resume, who knows? Big Ten play starts this week. Iowa, Michigan State. Obviously, we already talked about another Michigan State game, but don't sleep on Iowa. Don't sleep on Bennett Sturts. Don't sleep on Ben McCollum. That team hasn't really been tested yet. Here's your chance for us to start talking about you. NC State Auburn is a game that, at the beginning of the year, probably would have been looking a lot forward to and assumed we would be picking. Just put it on our radar as a game to watch. I feel like this is a week where if Auburn loses both of these games, it's I'm probably just going to forget about them for a while. So I would like to think that Tahad Pettiford is still going to be one of the better players in the sport. But if they just don't have anything around him, then obviously he's been up and down too. So I don't know. Maybe they'll find something. Maybe this whole Bruce Pearl leaving thing is just kind of upset the makeup of that program. Ole Miss St. John's. We didn't we didn't talk about St. John's. They're 4-3. They don't have a heck of a lot left on their schedule. Like, don't lose this game, or the Beast is gonna be like UConn and who knows what else, because Marquette doesn't look that great. We talked about how Xavier was bad, and I don't think they're going to be a tournament team. But like, I just like then I start looking around the Big East, and I'm like, it's UConn and who? Because I liked Creighton at the beginning of the year, and that seems like it was a mistake. So I'll eat crow on that one. But this St. John's team was supposed to be really good, and we'll give them a little bit of okay. Maybe it's this last minute, like we're going Ian Jackson as point guard, and then we're okay. We're now all of a sudden he's not a point. I don't know. I would like to see them, for the good of the Big East, not lose this game.
That would be very good. Ole Miss has not been too. They haven't played that well this year, to be honest. Like in terms of they don't look that good from the games I've watched, and yeah, that's one they're going to want to win. Additionally to that, Greg, yeah, like you said, I'm taking NC State over Auburn. Just again with the Auburn issues, and uh, want to re-bring up that when things happened on the island, just not to overreact. So NC State looked like they weren't as good as maybe we thought on the island. I will wait to kind of reserve judgment until they get like a week or two under their legs back in the continental U.S. and just see how that goes. But a lot of good games to watch. Again, we couldn't even get to all those in some of our picks. Greg, any final thoughts for the week?
Like you said, man, the hits just keep on coming, and I'm not mad about it.
I'll have one final thought before I get to some other reminders. Boston College, you were eliminated from the national championship. We have to eliminate one team, Greg, and they're 4-4 already. So we're gonna eliminate Boston College this week, and then we'll do more next week. But I'm gonna have the list and the sheet ready to go for next week of teams, and Greg and I can kind of reference that more as we go along. But yeah, we're gonna eliminate them. All right, my turn to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the Game House YouTube channel, and then like and subscribe wherever you get this podcast, whether Apple Podcast or Spotify. We are wherever you get your podcast. It helps us out as we go along here, and we will also have, like I said, shorts and clips on social media and on YouTube. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.